guys. Welcome to another episode of the Pop Culture Galaxy podcast. I'm Mark Bridge, and I'm here with Zach Worsner.
Hey, that's me.
And we are continuing with our James Bond retrospective with on our Majesty's Secret Service. Now, this is the first Bond movie to be ever without um, Sean Connery.
Yep.
Big deal. And it's also the first one that Peter Hunt did. He was known for
The first and only.
first he's known as the editor, and then he did some second unit stuff. He directed Chitty Bang Bang, did it?
He worked on it.
Worked
I
on
don't
it. I don't
know
think
if
he
he
directed.
directed it.
But yeah, it wasn't well received when it came out. Its cost budget was of $7 million, but it made $82 million. I think the last one made like 100 and change. The last one
Yeah.
before this.
Audiences just didn't react well to not Sean.
And
Like, George was just seen as a pretender.
Yep. So
at the time.
But then it's just funny how life works with pop culture, especially where something that was not regarded well over time just built this following to where something is just becomes like a special thing. And this is now regarded as one of the best Bond films.
Yeah. You know what I feel like I should punch myself in the nose for saying this. But kind of what you're saying, the movie kind of reminds me a little bit, especially considering what came after.
Hold on, got a package. How unprofessional of me. No, I'm just kidding. I just got a package. Whatever. What were you saying?
So this movie, the way it was poorly received and then kind of came around to be beloved.
Yeah.
It pinches. I hate myself to say this because I still don't like this particular movie, but it reminds me a little bit of Batman v Superman. In that there were so many things in it that audiences just outright rejected.
Right.
Including myself. Some things in them that we rejected for good reason, like how horrible Ben Affleck is in the role. At me. I don't care. At me. Bring it.
I'm going to at you, but go ahead.
But we've discussed this many times.
Right.
But, there's so much, even beyond that, that, regardless of whether it was good or bad, the film studio said we need to go back. We need to do something different next time.
Right.
So, basically the shared lesson between On Her Majesty's Secret Service and Batman v Superman, the reaction to that, the shared lesson is course correction can be very dangerous. So as we'll see in the coming weeks, the movies that came out after OHMSS were, spoiler alert, really bad. And the movie that came out after Batman v Superman was, spoiler alert, really bad. It was so bad it made me yearn for Batman v Superman.
Yeah.
And just the idea of, audiences reject this, so instead of following through and like building this character arc and building these storylines the way they were meant to be, let's just pretend it never happened and move on. In the case of Batman v Superman into Justice League, that's proven kind of unsuccessful, and they kind of soft rebooted the whole thing.
Yeah.
Like, who knows if Henry Cavill's going to be back? I think he'll be back, unless he gets cast as Bond. Fingers crossed. But, Affleck's out. Wonder Woman's still happening. It's a whole mess, and they're taking it film by film.
Yeah.
Kind of a James Bond approach, which we'll see might actually work well for them in the near future. Um, but with Bond, you know, we'll get into Diamonds Are Forever later, but the reaction to this, well, you could see it go back. You could see them go, "Oh my God, how did we mess up with OHMSS?" So and so they tried to fix it. That didn't work. And then by the time we get to The Spy Who Loved Me, 1977, they're like, "Hey, let's actually acknowledge On Her Majesty's Secret Service. Let's bring that in, and let's not ignore what happened in the past. Let's let that add to the character and build his world." And kind of from there, you see the movie get acknowledged a lot more
Yep.
because it's one of the very few Bond movies where Bond undergoes serious character development.
For real.
I don't think I'm ever gonna meet another girl like you, Tracy. Ah, oh, my heart, my heart. I watched it last night. Teared up at the end.
Yeah, that's
It was like, yeah, it got me. Not even at the very end, but yeah, I mean, we're spoiling the hell out of this movie.
yeah,
So, come on.
yeah.
Um, but even before then, there during the wedding when he's got his little moment with Moneypenny, I was just
Yeah.
like, oh, because that was something that we've been talking about on
Right,
this
right.
podcast, is their dynamic specifically.
Uh-huh.
And I love that Moneypenny is Lois Maxwell is 12 years older than George Lazenby. That's hot. And I think she's at her hottest in this movie.
Yeah, yeah. I was
Like,
like,
she has her scene with like the hair like very tight, very short. I was like, huh, hello, Miss Moneypenny.
and it's funny how in this movie, usually when he interacts with her like in the beginning of the movies, they flirt a lot, and then the closest he's ever gotten to like really kissing her would be on the cheek or close to the mouth, but it's like, but he smacks her on the ass in this one, did he? Right, smack. And
It's more of an endearing grope.
yeah, and then when he kisses her goodbye, he kisses her full on the lips. So it's just really ironic that in this movie he chooses to marry someone else when he's been so like more affectionate in this movie than he's ever been in the previous. And I was like, oh man, like she was really was that hurt when she's at the wedding, or was that like she's happy for him?
It
She
was
played it
all
both.
of the above. It
Yeah.
was, she was sad, but she was, bittersweet.
Mm-hmm.
And there's tears of joy and sadness.
Yeah.
She's happy that he's finally found someone, because she knew that she would never be able, even if she would be able, she just wasn't up to the task of taming Bond.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And what's so great, 1969, Free Love, like Tracy has no intention of taming Bond. They're like, what? Oh, here's what you should get me for our wedding present: 3 girls and 3 boys. That's so good. That's like, hey, Bond, you've got your kind of marriage. It's all beautiful.
Yeah.
Whatever everyone's into, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and you know, she's just more Bond's speed.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if Bond were a one woman kind of guy, he would have been with Moneypenny from the jump.
Yeah.
But he just wouldn't be able to
Yeah.
do his duties and bang everyone
Yep.
and then go home to her. It would tear him up because it would tear her up. Oh, they loved each other too much to get together.
So the movie came out in 1969 December, and again, it didn't flop, but because it made less than the previous movies, it's considered not as successful.
Yeah,
Um,
it did, like, compared to the previous ones, it was a major drop off. It was like 25 million,
yeah,
um, compared to You Only Live Twice,
I
which
think
was like
110. I think it made
60 or so something,
uh,
a lot.
right.
Um, still way more for the budget, but it's one of those. It's kind of like a blockbuster version of the Bloomhouse
Mm-hmm.
thing, where like Bloomhouse makes one of those movies with the scary guy and Ethan Hawke,
Yeah,
those
yeah.
really shitty movies that nobody likes.
Mm-hmm.
Where he goes boo, with the jump scares and
Mm-hmm.
the video, whatever.
Yeah.
But like, they made a bunch of they made oh, I think they only made two of them. But like the movie was universally hated, but
Mhm.
it made a lot of money, so they were like, let's do another one.
Yeah.
Um, Meanwhile, you've got Happy Death Day, a masterpiece.
Yeah, I love that movie.
They do that one. It does not as good as they were hoping, but it does good enough to make a sequel.
Hmm.
Part two, just as good. Oh my God, how did they do it?
Haven't seen it, but I'm excited.
Um, but somehow, some way, it just doesn't perform at the box office. Still, way more than its
Yep.
budget.
Hmm.
Still, firmly profitable. But Jason Blum, even though he's like an indie guy, or presents himself as an indie guy, he's still all about the money.
Hmm.
Um, just like any studio head is, just like any studio head, probably should be in some ways. But Happy Death Day 3 is currently not in development.
Yeah.
Oh, it breaks my heart. Oh, it could be worse. They could do Happy Death Day, Diamonds Are Forever.
I'm curious to see that movie again to see if it's as bad as you say it is.
I feel like I might be overselling how bad it. Like, there's some stuff in it that I like, but especially after watching this one,
Mhm.
like this movie is just a masterpiece.
So to note on this movie, it was the longest movie of Bond film until
220.
until which one beat it? I think it was Casino Royale that overtook it.
Hmm.
And then of course the longest one now is Spectre.
Yeah.
but it was the longest movie, and well shot. A lot of cool action set pieces. This is the movie that Christopher Nolan, I think, took a lot of notes
Yeah, he,
from
he
with
says it's
Inception.
like one of his favorites, right?
Yeah, yeah. So if you watch Inception and that whole snow battle scene in Inception, that was a clear homage to this film. Um, uh, for the cast, of course, Lewis Maxwell. She came back as Miss Moneypenny, looking gorgeous. And you had Bernard Diaz M. And so there was no Q showed up at the end, but there was no Q-ness like
Oh,
oh let's.
he was in the beginning too. He's in like one of the first
Oh
scenes
right, yeah, that's right, that's right. But it wasn't.
briefly.
But he
But
didn't
there's no
like. Yeah,
gadgets.
no gadget. They wanted this to be like realistic, and I think this one was the closest to the novels because they didn't want to change the novel up that much.
Yeah.
Um,
And you can see that like this is kind of the start of that push and pull that you're going to see throughout the entire series from now on.
mhm,
It's always going to go from one end to the other and back again, because some people like the serious Bond,
mhm,
some people like the wild gadgets and crazy adventure
yep,
Bond,
yep.
and it's just always gonna and it always should go back and forth because as much as uh, we like Skyfall, Spectre is essentially more Skyfall, but some parts are better and some parts are worse.
Mhm,
Um, and it doesn't bounce off of the movie
right.
the way the best. Usually the Bond movies that people hail as their favorites
Mhm.
are ones that are reactionary to the ones before it.
Uh,
Like people like this one because it brings things, even though the action is bigger than ever,
mhm.
it's more realistic as counter programming to You Only Live Twice. Like
Mhm.
there's no ninjas
Yeah.
and swords and throwing
And
stars.
no like elaborate layer.
Hmm.
Even though
Yeah, I
that's
mean
no
the
place
layer
for.
is elaborate, but it's firmly grounded in
Yeah.
realism.
Yeah.
It's not in a friggin' volcano,
Yeah.
which like is still awesome.
Mhm.
Like nothing against You Only Live Twice, great movie, but it's one that is almost defined by its excesses,
Mhm. Mhm.
and not in a bad way. But this one goes in the other direction. It's like let's define it by the character and just by these straightforward stunts that you watch them and you go, oh my God, how did that guy not get killed?
Yeah.
They're just like, oh, we're gonna blow you up with a grenade and you're just gonna go flying off the bobsled. Are you okay with that? Yeah, sure. They
Yeah.
just do it.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's talk about Bond. So last movie, Sean said, "I'm not coming back." So the biggest challenge that they faced was finding another Bond. And then I think it was either Cubby Broccoli or someone saw an ad. It was like a beer commercial or some liquor commercial, and they saw George Lazenby, and he wasn't even an actor. He was just a model. And he's Australian.
Mm-hmm.
And he was like straight Australian too, with the accent was just like thick, so they had to like tell him to simmer that accent down. But it was funny. When I was watching the movie, he sounded dubbed for some reason. I wonder if that was
He's dubbed in the scenes where he's impersonating the guy when he's undercover.
right. Oh, right.
Those scenes he is dubbed.
Oh, he sounded dubbed in the beginning too. I mean,
That might have just been ADR.
Yeah, ADR. Yeah, I figured because it was like it was at the beach side, and you couldn't get good sound there, so obviously.
Yeah. But God, that scene is so good.
Yeah. So
that whole opening.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
And of course, it's we go back to Iron Man 2 when Don Cheadle says, "I'm here, deal with it," right? This was kind of like it, but more in your face, where it's like, oh, the other fella didn't have to go through this.
Well, even before then, like it's got the close-ups of like him lighting the cigarette, but his face is in shadow, and even when he gets out and does like the whole, runs into the ocean and rescues her, you don't get a clear shot of his face. Even when they do have that Michael Bay shot from underneath looking up, he's still kind of silhouetted. And when the first like actual close up you get of him is when he says Bond, James Bond, and that's like it's a good deal with it. Moment. There's no doubt this is James Bond.
I mean,
the same guy, not a code name.
It's funny, right? It's like when I saw it too, because I've watched the other movies back to back, I got used to seeing Sean. It kind of took me aback a little bit, like, oh, you're not him. But after a while, it was like, all right.
And it's also one of those things where, you see it in You Only Live Twice, but you really see it in Diamonds Are Forever. Sean aged so fast, so quickly. By the time you get to Diamonds Are Forever, it's like you'd think that it's 10 years later, at least 15 years later.
Right.
But we'll get there.
That Scotch, man. That Scotch will do you in.
Yeah. And George was young. I think he was the youngest Bond. He was 30 when the movie came out.
Right.
And that opening scene, he really does show off one of his best traits that really helps the movie hold up today, is just how physical he is.
Yeah. He almost wanted to do all the stunts and everything too.
And he did, and he does a lot of them, and you can see his face in a lot of them.
Yeah.
And when he's not, it's usually in the skiing where he's got a big old mask anyway, and his little hat.
Yeah, it's. I think it's the Australian thing, right? It was like those guys.
They're rugged. Yeah. They're a rugged people.
Yeah, man. It was funny. So the opening, the score. John Barry returned again for the score. A lot of his little motifs he did. It reminded me of the Jack White, Alicia Keys song. That they did for Quantum of Solace. Like they kind of sampled some of it, like the little horns, right? Like the way how it ranges. Like, oh man, it's almost like they sampled that to make their song. Because I almost thought, oh man, is this? It's like it sounded familiar. Like that song was about to come on. I was like, no, but that's from Quantum of Solace. So,
and there's also, I guess, the that main theme for the movie, which is an instrumental.
Yeah, no opening. Well, there's a song for it, but it played in the middle.
Yeah.
From
during the love montage.
Yeah, from Louis Armstrong.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's like I wonder what the decision was to not do like the. I mean, it did have the silhouette, the naked ladies, but it just was a score instead of like a song.
Well, the reasoning behind that was just because of the title. They were like, "How are we gonna do a title with this without either it being like a Gilbert and Sullivan patter song or like some kind of royal march?"
Right.
And they're like, let's just do an instrumental. Let's just sidestep the whole thing.
So I'm trying to remember, other than Dr. No, which had a song in it, but it just didn't have the word Dr. No in it. all the other songs prior to that was the title of the movie. Like I know, yeah, From Russia with Love,
Yep.
Goldfinger. Uh,
Thunderball.
oh yeah, so yeah. You're right. All the
Yeah.
songs had the title in it.
And the next one that doesn't have the title in it is Octopussy.
Yeah,
Although that would have been such a good song.
yeah. Right.
Like I don't even know how they would do that,
Yeah,
but I would love to have found out.
yeah. So next up on the cast list, we have Diana Rigg as Tracy DeVinci. What?
Hey, what?
DeVenzo. So wait, what were they Italian or were they Portuguese? What were
Oh, they
they?
were Italian. They were
Okay,
Italian as fuck.
okay, all
Look
right.
at her dad.
Yeah. So
I mentioned I'm Italian today. What?
let's talk about Diana Rigg for a second. She was gorgeous.
She's pretty.
But I will say this, right? Because you said you only saw the last season of Game of Thrones,
True.
so you never got to see her in her full glory on
Yeah,
Game of
I
Thrones.
was like everything up until the last season was just filler. The last season is the only good season, so I only watched the last season. I kid, I kid.
So Diana Rigg, like you see a hint of the Queen of Thorns, which is the character she plays in Game of Thrones. You know, in it just the way how she is as Tracy's like very sort of like no nonsense, and I like that. So there's a character in Game of Thrones. Her name is Marjorie. She's basically her granddaughter in the show, played by Natalie Dormer.
Oh, I like her.
Put Natalie Dormer and Diana Rigg's younger self side by side. Holy shit, they're twins.
Yeah, I could see that. I could see that. Yeah, they do look a little similar.
It was like holy shit. Like they have the same kind of eyes too. Like that kind of
Yeah, it's a very unique face.
yeah. It was just really good. The only thing that Natalie has is kind of have that curl on her lips, to make her look like she's smirking all the time. But which is sexy too. I find that pretty sexy. um, but yeah, Diana Rigg younger self looks just like Natalie Dormer. But going back to her, she's like one of the most gorgeous Bond girls in the saga. Like,
Oh yeah, I mean even when she's drowning herself, I'm like she's gonna be a good corpse. Uh, but then her opening scene after that in the casino is just like the most gratuitous but plot relevant cleavage
yep.
I've ever seen in a movie.
And you know what? I the way how that scene right where she kind of looks up. So I remember back in the days I did this project for school when I was going to film school, where I basically took a bunch of scenes from different movies and kind of like put um, put them to a song. I did like a remix of Linkin Park's "Closer to the Edge." Uh, what's this thing? That name of the song again? One step closer. Oh, one step closer. Right. I did the remix to that, and I put like a bunch of action movies to it. And one of the scenes I did, even though I didn't know it was from this particular movie, was that scene where she kind of looks up, right? Right? But it was like an iconic scene. I remember seeing it all over the place, not knowing if it's from a James Bond movie, not knowing it's from this James Bond movie. And like, holy shit, man! Like that whole sequence, that scene, it was just so iconic. She just looks so pretty. Um, but yeah, that I did put that in one of my little projects that I did back in the day. So that's why I kind of remember it every time I see it. Um,
Nice. But she's so good. Uh, she's a match for Bond, but she's also got you know something that he likes,
mhm.
which is like just this deep, psychological trauma where she's suicidal in the first part of that movie.
Yeah, right. I
Uh,
mean, they didn't explain really throughout the film why she wanted to do that, right? It was just was it that
yeah, not entirely. She just
was it
had
was it
issues.
one of those sort of like going back to like a movie like Titanic where you kind of had Rose. She was like rich but sheltered, closed off, wanting to kill herself.
Absolutely, it's
It
very
was
much. She's very much a Rose.
yeah. So, um, why was he there? Was he looking for someone?
He was just driving by.
And that's what I'm saying. It was kind of like, as good as the movie is, a lot of it was like really coincidental.
Well, the movie gets every movie gets one coincidence, and this one starts on it.
Well, actually two, because it was a coincidence he met her in the beginning, but it was also coincidence to how during the whole time where he's trying to escape from the guys from the snow sequence, and then he's around the ice rink and he's like trying to hide, and then she just shows up too. It was like,
Yeah.
it was kind of a coincidence because there was no other reason for her to be there, right? Was she looking for him, or she just enjoying
She
the
might.
games?
I don't remember if they say, but I feel like she probably. Maybe he told her where she was generally.
Right, right.
Um, and she was kind of like, "Well, I'll be in the neighborhood. In case you want to get engaged."
Yeah. So this.
Oh, my heart.
So he the so for the, sort of like the beginning 30 minutes, 40 minutes in the movie, the first act, like I like the fact that they kind of like made it like a traditional love story where including the whole montage of them kind of hanging out.
Hmm.
So they had
Except for him breaking into the safe, that whole sequence, which was added for the movie, is
right.
not part of the book.
Right.
Like it's almost unrecognizable as a James Bond
Yeah.
movie.
Yeah. But then I even though the whole sequence with him going to Blofeld's headquarters was pretty cool and all, but it almost felt like it was like a break in the love story and
Yeah,
a
this
whole
it's definitely a weird like. Okay, we're adapting this book. Should
mm-hmm,
we be pragmatic and like do it like Blofeld's got a bomb in his lair or something?
mm-hmm,
Or should we do like the overly complicated story that Ian Fleming thought up? And like they probably all put their heads together and we're just like, this time let's just do it straight.
yeah, yeah,
And whether or not that was a good decision is debatable because we don't get to know what the streamlined version would have been if
right,
Blofeld just like had a bomb or something.
yeah, yeah,
But like to its credit, there's a lot that I really like in that whole Piz Gloria scene,
mm-hmm,
or not scene, but that whole act.
yeah, yeah.
Um, Even though, yeah, it definitely brings the movie to a screeching halt, and like
Like
is from a whole other movie pretty much,
yeah,
and
right.
Bond is dubbed the whole time. Um, but like it's also got a lot of fun stuff, like all of those super hot
Yeah,
babes.
man.
And the one with the glasses is my
Yeah,
favorite.
it's pretty much like they took another Bond movie and just put it in the middle of this Bond
Hmm.
movie.
And it's part of why it's so long, and it would probably benefit from editing, but I
Mm-hmm.
don't think that it's something that you could just edit.
Right,
You'd
right.
have to rewrite and just redo that whole portion.
Yeah, like you would have to sort of like, because remember when was is You Only Live Twice, where we talked about how why didn't they just carry on the same girl throughout it? Why did they kill her to bring on this
Right.
new Bond girl? Like maybe if someone was working on it today, they probably would have organically worked Tracy's character into that whole section.
Yeah, like she could have been one of the brainwashed girls.
Right. You know what I mean?
That could have worked. But then maybe they wouldn't have liked it so much if Bond was
Right.
m- potentially literally sleeping with every single girl
Which
in the building.
which also reminded me of The Witcher, right?
Ah,
The Witcher 3 especially, where you meet Yennefer, and Yennefer is like your true love and everything. Like you have a relationship with her, right? But in between the games, unless it's because if you meet Triss and you have sex with Triss, then you have to choose between the two of them. You can't choose one. But if it's not Triss, you can bang every single other chick consequence free in the entire game and get away with it and still come back to Yennefer all lovely. Oh, I love you, Yennefer. I was like, so I was like, oh yeah, this is Bond. Like, oh yeah, I love you, Tracy. Oh yeah, let me bang you and you.
hey, it was the swinging '60s,
Yeah. Um,
which kind of we've talked about the box office relative failure of this movie.
mm-hmm.
And part of it, I think, really just comes down to the fact that it came out in 1969,
Right.
like the absolute height of the counterculture movement.
Mm.
And this was late '69, and You Only Live Twice was mid '67,
Mm-hmm.
and it's only 2.5 years, but those 2.5 years were a long 2.5 years. I mean, we're all familiar with just the one punch after another that this country took in 1968.
Mm-hmm.
And December 1969 is like after Woodstock.
Mm-hmm.
It's like the absolute height of that movement. And here comes this movie about a British secret agent, the Man,
Yeah.
who wears a kilt for half the movie and is just like, I reject the counterculture entirely. We're gonna pretend that that doesn't even exist. And which is really funny because, or ironic, I suppose, because George Lazenby was like openly part of that.
Mm-hmm.
He was like, I want this movie to have, instead of the traditional Bond score, I want it to be themed to like 60s rock songs,
Right.
which probably wouldn't be a good fit for Bond, to
Mm-hmm.
be honest. But like, it would have been different. But it was just the wrong time for a James Bond movie.
Mm-hmm.
Like the way kind of people are saying, trying to push a narrative that James Bond is kind of done. Like, oh, we don't need James Bond anymore because like we're all woke and shit.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, yeah, yeah, you're so woke. Have fun on Twitter. Um, you know, being woke on Twitter is a great excuse for not having to actually go out and do something.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe throw a brick, but whatever. Um, it was just not the right time for James Bond,
Mm-hmm.
especially a James Bond that just Bond is so timely all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe, but then I think about it and I'm like, could you imagine if like Bond hung out with a bunch of hippies? And it's like, nope, I cannot.
Yeah.
It probably would have been terrible.
And it wouldn't have aged well, I think.
Now, yeah.
Yeah.
And like the closest he gets is like some of the scenes with the girls where they're especially that one with the glasses, my favorite one
Ooh,
with the little
yeah.
curly hair. She's got like those kind of psychedelic
And how did
glasses.
she know? Like, cause she wrote her room number on his thigh, right? Like, how did she know he would? Cause did she not believe that he was like? Did she think? Cause he's supposed to be undercover as this sort of nerdy genealogy or whatever he is, right?
She likes nerds.
But then, like, how would she know that he would be able to escape his door to come to her, right? Like,
Because she was like, for this, you'd find a way.
okay. And then how did the other girl escape to go to his door? That place is
For
not a.
for this, they found a way.
Because I understand him being skilled enough to escape his own room, but that girl escaping her room and that girl knowing that he would try to escape his room is like, okay. But
The
anyway,
things we do for D,
yeah.
the things we do for D and V.
Oh my god. But yeah, it was a cool sequence. But then let's move on to. Oh, by the way, I didn't mention up the top that this was based on the sixth novel of the series. I think. I mean, right now, pretty much all the books have been made into movies, right? And we're
At
pretty
this
much,
point,
yeah,
yeah.
at this point. But this
So
was
some of them in name only,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
but they all have yes.
So that'd be a cool thing to do, right? Just go back to a novel that was just that they'd never really adapted properly, and just adapt them, but kind of call them a different name.
Yeah, like The Spy Who Loved Me is very, very loose. You Only Live Twice is very, very loose.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there's 007 in New York, which is basically Live and Let Die. Some of Live and Let Die.
Mm-hmm.
There's a couple. There's like Property of a Lady, which is considered kind of unfilmable because it's mostly like there's no action in it. Like it's a I think it's like a point of view from a Bond girl.
Right.
But yeah, I've only read a couple.
Yo, they
But
should do that, right? You know what movie?
yeah,
You know what movie was almost like that, but it's not a Bond movie. It's the movie that Cameron Diaz and Tom Cruise did,
Night and
Night and
Day.
Day,
I love that one.
where it's like it's from her point of view, and I kind of like man, they should do a Bond movie like that, where it's a Bond girl, but she's meeting Bond and she's going through all this adventure with Bond. It would be cool. But of
That could
course,
be.
people would be like, "Oh, they're pushing an agenda, blah blah
Yeah.
blah." I mean, they
That was
already,
probably. I bet that was the pitch for Night and Day. Let's do a Bond movie from the Bond girl's perspective.
yeah, yeah,
I haven't thought of it that way, but that's absolutely what it is. Yeah.
yeah. So then now let's move on to Ernst Blofeld, uh,
Telly Savalas, baby.
played by Telly Savalas. Now, are we to? Was this almost like a retcon?
Okay, so there is a little bit of a continuity problem here.
Right.
And it wasn't going to be a continuity problem, but they said so the big debate when they hired George Lazenby was how big of a deal do we want to make the fact that he's been recast?
Right.
What they ultimately went with was absolutely none.
Mm-hmm.
There's the one little wink and a nod to the camera where he overtly breaks the fourth wall and says, "This never happened to the other guy."
And then even
Which,
the scenes where he's like visiting the other movies and you hear the theme songs for the
yeah,
other movies.
that is done to be like, this is not a different Bond.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully, no one ever develops a fan theory that it's a different Bond.
Yeah.
Mark. And he's like, "Hey, remember this thing from Thunderball I had? Yeah. And this, and like it's that's done to be like it's the same guy."
Mm-hmm.
But originally, in the first parts of the script, first versions of the script,
Mm-hmm.
they were gonna actually excuse it by
Right.
saying that Bond had become too recognizable to his enemies,
Mm-hmm.
so they gave him plastic surgery
Right.
so that he looked different.
Mm-hmm.
But they ultimately decided, let's just not do that,
Mm-hmm.
so that if we recast again, it's not like Bond's face is just like destroyed.
Yeah.
He's gotten more work done than like I don't know, some famous celebrity who's gotten a lot of work done.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever, you know what I mean. And so that that work having been done was the original justification for Telly Savalas Blofeld not recognizing Bond.
Right.
And now it's kind of got to be like Telly Savalas is like super nearsighted, but is too proud to acknowledge that,
Mm-hmm.
because he looks right at him, but he doesn't see through his disguise as Hilary Bray, and his disguise is just glasses.
Right.
So it's one of those, like, he's got Superman Clark Kent powers.
Mm-hmm.
It's like the flimsiest disguise, but Blofeld doesn't see him. It's helped a little tiny bit by Blofeld being played by a different actor.
Mm-hmm.
And then in the behind the scenes stuff I saw on the Blu-ray, there's nothing about whether or not Donald Pleasance was ever going to come back.
Right.
Like, I wonder if that was ever, if they ever asked him, like, "Hey, do you want to come back?" Because it would have been very different
Mm-hmm.
with him, because they're two very different performances.
Yeah.
And to his credit, Telly Savalas, I think, is excellent as Blofeld.
Yeah.
He's like not gimmicky at all.
Mm-hmm.
Again, like with the Bond characters, getting more and more over the top.
Mm-hmm.
You've got Largo's eye patch, then you've got Blofeld with his scar, and like eccentric weirdness. Like, he's so creepy in You Only Live Twice, but like in a good way.
Mm-hmm.
They're like, "Hey, let's just like clip his ears back, but aside from that, just have him be Telly Savalas, play it straight."
Yeah.
And it works really well.
And in that movie, his Blofeld's supposed to have gone through some surgery, right? Because there's no scar, or was he just like?
I think it might be implied.
Oh, and okay. So here's the thing: is the first time they meet in this movie, was that supposed to be the first time they met? Like, were they?
Well, that's the other part of the problem, is that in the novels,
Mm-hmm.
it was On Her Majesty's Secret Service, then You Only Live Twice.
Right. Yeah.
But the movies flipped it
Yeah. Yeah.
and reversed it. So they meet for the first time twice, basically. So that's the closest that it gets to like a real continuity goof, that you just kind of have to go with it.
Yeah. Yeah.
You just have to be like, well, Blofeld just doesn't recognize Bond. We'll just have to deal with that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It was just. It took me a minute to like. Wait, is this supposed to be a retcon? Whatever. Let's get to it.
Yeah.
But yeah. So, And so, what was his plot? His plot he wanted to sort of create a bunch of Manchurian candidates with these
Yeah,
villains.
he brainwashed them so that, and then he could trigger them with like those devices in their
Mm-hmm.
presence,
Mm-hmm.
and then they could like blow up buildings in whatever cities they went to.
Yeah, yeah,
Which is it's a good Bond plot
yeah. Mm-hmm.
because like it's a great excuse to have these beautiful girls from all over the world. So it's like, hey, whatever race or creed you are, there's gonna be someone hot here for you.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, and just put them all in one room for Bond to bang, and
Yeah, he
you
was
know,
pretty much like,
kid in a candy
yeah,
store,
right. It was like, oh man, which
and
one
the
do I choose?
candy
Which
is
one do I choose?
the candy is vaginas.
um,
Um, but it is a lot. Like
mhm,
it's a lot to take in. There's it's a overly complicated story plot line,
mhm.
which fits Blofeld perfectly and works in the movie, but would, if it wasn't an adaptation, would have been streamlined into something else.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Um, and it's fun to think of like, what if it was just Blofeld with a bomb? Then you could, make the movie about 2 hours.
yeah.
Um, but you would lose some of the charm and
Mhm.
some of that build up when he does finally leave his Gloria at it's when the movie just goes into overdrive and doesn't stop until the very end.
Yeah, yeah,
As soon as that ski chase starts, it's just
yeah. That was a cool ski.
back of the seat until the end of the movie. Just the whole time. It's just
Yeah,
one game changing, medium defying action scene after another.
yeah,
Defining.
yeah.
Medium defining action scene after
That
another.
whole car chase sequence in the snow too was like, oh my god, like, cause you're in the snow, the sleekness of the ice and everything is just like, oh my god. So yeah, that car chase sequence was really, really awesome. With Diana, Tracy, she's driving the cars,
Mm-hmm.
and they got
And the
into the
car flips, and there's the shot of the guy
yeah,
upside down.
yeah, they just
Which,
flipped it. They just
yeah, yeah. If you look really closely, you can see that the background is flipped too.
yeah,
But like it goes by so fast
yeah, yeah.
that you just go with the energy of it, and that's like a Peter Hunt thing.
Mhm,
So I guess a good time to mention, like, this is all Peter Hunt.
mhm,
Peter Hunt was the guru. He was the secret sauce that made the best Bond movies the best ones,
mhm, mhm,
and it's part of why Goldfinger looks so tame in comparison.
mhm,
Like, parents would watch From Russia with Love and be like, "Oh, this is a little. I don't know if my kids should be watching this."
mhm.
And then they'd watch Goldfinger and go, "Oh, I guess it's not so bad. Okay, all right, I won't watch you watch the next one," which is perfect because then they watch Thunderball, which is more violent than all of them, and the kids are like, "Ah, mom doesn't know." Um, and Peter Hunt, like his style, which in some ways makes the movies look old,
Mhm.
but it also makes them feel young.
Right.
Like it makes him look old because he's just like, let's just aggressively jump cut everywhere.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, cause like the rule is like no jump cuts,
Mhm.
and he's like, well, what should I do? Should I either have jump cuts or should I show all the space between punches?
Mhm.
And he's like, I'm going for the jump cuts because I want to get to the action.
Mhm.
And like, if I get like, just go straight from the punch to the punch to the kick, and none of that wind up. You don't need any of this. You don't need any of this. Just go straight for the hits, and it's so fast and
Yeah.
so violent.
Sometimes it got a little bit frenetic too, like with the whole bobsled scene too. Like almost my eyes almost popped out of my head for some of those
Yeah,
sequences.
and some of those cuts are so quick
Yeah.
too. Like even when they're not the jump cuts within a single shot,
Mhm.
um, with some zooms in and out to kind of play with it. Like it's very like that is where the film, in a very good way,
Mhm.
shows its age. Like it's
Right.
1969. It's like it's a little psychedelic at times. Like yeah, there's that great like really, what do you call it when it's a really fast zoom out
Mhm.
when Bond goes running into the ocean to save Tracy.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Like it starts zoomed in really far and it zooms out super quick,
Yeah. Mhm.
and it shows him running like the whole time, and it's just like there's so much energy in that shot because of that action,
Mhm.
because of that camera action, that it makes just the act of Bond running on the beach feel super exciting. And then the guys show up and he fights them, and they're like uh, fighting on the beach, and then one cut later they're fighting in ankle deep in the water, and then one cut later they're like waist deep in the water, beating the crap out of each other. And it's like you couldn't do that in a movie today, because you'd be like, oh well, how did they get from that part of the water to the other? And it's like this one just is like, well, we cut.
Right.
That's how they got there. First they're on the sand, then they're in the water, then they're deep in the water. What do you want? And like it just cuts through all of that time that you would take to get there.
Yeah.
And it's just like, they're there. Let's just put them there. And it's, probably not the kind of thing that they would teach in film school, I imagine. I have not gone to film school. I have no idea. I don't know anything about it. I'm unqualified to be talking about any of this stuff. But all I know is that Peter Hunt, his style is just like, let's get to the good stuff. Let's cut out all of that filler within a 5-second scene. Right. Within a 5-second shot, he's like, let's cut all the filler. We've got 2 seconds of great material in here. Get rid of all the other stuff. It's all nonsense.
Yep.
And every fight scene in this movie adheres to that. And like, compared to some of the fight scenes, pretty much every fight scene in Goldfinger, and some of the fight scenes even in You Only Live Twice.
Right.
The action in On Her Majesty's Secret Service, so hard to say that phrase.
Hard to say On Our Majesties and call it a day.
It might
Secret Service.
Some of the best action in the whole series.
Right.
Easy. And those stunts, like, he said in the bobsled scene, Blofeld throws a grenade at Bond. Bond blows up and goes flying.
Yeah, right.
And it's a stunt man. It's not and he does that a couple of times. He does it during the first chase. In the first chase, he gets his ski blown off. He just goes flying, and he just gets back up and keeps on skiing. And like, they don't fake that.
Yeah.
It's just a stuntman, Vic Armstrong, who learned how to ski for this movie. What? He did not know how to ski, and then when he got hired, he was like, "I guess I should learn how to ski." That's a badass.
Yeah.
He's just like, "All right, blow me up."
And then
blow him up.
There is even a sequence on the bobsled where it blows up, and he's on the edge of the thing, carrying him. That wasn't supposed to happen, and they said, "Oh, that should." It was cool.
I know.
Let's write it again.
It's like, it's a miracle. I don't know how compliant they were with safety regulations. I'd like to think that they were. I mean, no one got killed on this one. Like, You Only Live Twice. The guy got his leg cut off on the helicopter stunt by accident. Not even on a stunt. He was like the camera guy.
I think what's funny? I think more stuntmen are dying when regulations are tighter and technology is better for some reason. Because it's like
they're less experienced.
Yeah, and it's like there's so much more ways of things going wrong because there's so much more moving parts than simplicity of yesteryear, where it's like, okay, a car just needs to flip.
Yeah, like I mean, off the top of my head, one of the last really big although there's been a couple, like a guy got injured on Bond just now.
Yes.
On Bond 25.
Well, did Craig himself get injured on Bond 25?
He did, yeah. Tom Cruise obviously got injured on Mission Impossible 6. Yeah. A stuntman got killed doing Titans.
Yeah,
or not
injured.
Even a stuntman. It was just like a crew member, right?
Was it killed or injured? I think it was injured, right?
There's some injuries, but the one I'm thinking of is Resident Evil: The Final Chapter, where the Mila Jovovich stunt double on a motorcycle was driving and not even doing a stunt. She was just driving, and the camera was supposed to like move out of the way because it's a dynamic movement, and it just didn't move. Mechanical error or something, and she went right into it and got like critically injured. She's still in recovery from like a disfiguring horrible accident, and that's not like the fault of a stunt person. That was just like a mechanical problem.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Is like because there's so much moving parts with getting into the action. Is just so much more room for error than there's ever been.
When you look at that stuff, you're like when you watch Titanic, you're like, how did no one drown during this? When you watch Thunderball, you're like, how did no one drown during this? Sometimes it's like, Hollywood magic, like, they could be swimming in like 2 feet of water, and if
Yeah,
they run out of air, they can just stand up.
yeah, right.
But sometimes it's not. Sometimes they're like, hey, here's a shark. Don't get eaten. All right, here's some money.
Yeah.
And this one, they just throwing people in the snow and blowing them up.
Hmm.
Um, and some of those fights, oh my goodness, in the that little shack with the bells.
Yes, he's so Peter Hunt is like, this is the loudest scene I've ever shot because he wanted the actual bells. He was like, oh,
Yeah,
his sound guy just hated him that day.
I bet. But like it works.
Hmm. Hmm.
That whole scene is just a nonstop. Like, that's one of his best
And then
fight scenes. They're just throwing each other into those bells.
they even did something that I don't know if is even allowed today, but nobody would actually do it in real life anyway. They'll probably just use CG. They caused an avalanche. They threw bombs on the snow to cause an actual avalanche to shoot it.
Yeah, I don't know how big it was because the story was that there was like the army does like controlled avalanches
Hmm. Hmm.
in Switzerland. That's where they were shooting,
Right.
and uh, Peter Hunt was like, "Ooh, let us work with you so that we can use footage from that avalanche in our movie."
Hmm. Hmm.
And they were like, "Sure, yes, okay." And like every day he'd be like, "We're gonna do it soon," and like, "Yeah, we'll let you know when we're gonna do it."
Hmm.
And then he woke up one morning and looked up at the mountain and there was no snow, and it had just come down naturally.
Right.
So they did cause actual avalanches, presumably with permission.
Hmm.
I feel like that one would be they'd have to do that with permission, even back then.
Yeah.
Um, but also used a lot of you know stock footage
Hmm.
and miniatures with salt.
Right. Right. Right.
But like the scene where the actual avalanche is like picking up trees and like dragging
Hmm.
Bond and Tracy away, I'm like, how? The first time I saw this, this was the last classic Bond movie that I watched.
Hmm.
Many years ago, I got the DVD from like Blockbuster.
Right.
That's how long ago it was. And I made it to the scene where he's doing the bank the safe heist,
Right.
and the DVD just skipped and this like died.
Right.
And so I brought it back to Blockbuster, and it was the only copy they had, and
Hmm.
so I never watched it.
Hmm.
And then it wasn't until I got the Bond 50 Blu-ray box set
Yeah.
that I watched that movie for the first time,
Mm.
back in 2012, I guess.
Right.
And I was just blown away because, even knowing how good Peter Hunt's movies have been up to this point
Hmm.
is in terms of just the spectacle and the action, it blows them all away. Like when the avalanche is happening and there's like the animated figures like trying to run away
Yeah.
from it,
Yeah. Yeah.
I was like, I don't know how they did that.
Yeah.
I have no idea. And like, there's one where one of one of the henchmen goes and like there's a big old pile of snow just decimates him,
Hmm.
and he disappears. I'm like, how? How did they do that? Because it looked real.
Yeah.
It was like this is 1969, and that is a perfect special effect.
Yeah. I can see why Nolan liked this movie so much.
Yeah,
It.
because it's like that. Going back way back to Ray Harryhausen, who said, "If you can imagine it, I can create it."
Hmm.
And we've come a long way from stop motion since then.
Hmm.
But with all the CGI in the world, does you know example of a movie that I love, but the avalanche scene in War for the Planet of the Apes,
Right.
you could tell that they could have put a little more money in that. And it's like if they had done it with miniatures and little animated guy getting pile driven,
Yeah.
pile drived, pile drove
Cloud
by
Drive.
a snowball,
Uh-huh.
would have been better and a lot cheaper.
Right.
God, the movie's so good.
Yeah. Yep. So what else happens in this film? We talked about the Bond girls. Oh, so let's get into the whole Bond marrying Tracy. Like, I mean, I appreciated the fact that they did the whole montage of them going on dates, whatever, to kind of like, I guess, sell you on the idea that at least he's been out with this girl a couple of times and not just
Yeah,
have sex with her like one time and already in love. I mean,
Right, 'cause you get the impression that Bond is not someone who goes out on dates.
right.
Bond goes out and he comes home with whoever.
So I think so. That's the thing. I'm trying to think what made this girl so special. Why he would marry her other than the other girls. I guess there's some darkness about her that kind of is attracted to. Mere fact that she tried
It's
to kill herself. I guess in the beginning.
you know what it's like? It's like Beauty and the Beast.
Mm.
We love even though there's backlash against it, and it's often for good reason. We just love stories about good people changing bad people.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I remember when the Beauty and the Beast remake came out, everyone was like losing their minds on like Salon and whatever,
Yeah.
being like, how are we going to reconcile the messages of Beauty and the Beast with 2017?
Yeah.
And it's like, well, you just go with it. Like it's a fairy tale. It's
Yeah.
it's not a documentary.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like we don't want a scene of like Dan Stevens and Emma Watson
Oh
like
yeah. Yeah.
in couples therapy being like, so Beast, why are you so angry? And he's like, because I'm very mad. That was my Beast impression. I haven't seen the remake, so I only knew the animated version,
Right.
but I love the way he talks in that. But and on Her Majesty's Secret Service is the opposite of that. Bond is like, for once in his miserable life, the pure soul
Right.
who sees this damaged, broken person who's destructive,
Mm-hmm.
in her case, self-destructive,
Mm-hmm.
and is like, I think I can fix her.
Fix her.
I
Yeah.
think I can change her.
Mm-hmm.
And like her dad, it's great because it is kind of feminist too, because her dad is like, you need to dominate her, Bond, because I'm Italian and old timey.
Yeah.
And Bond's like, all right, come on, man. And the daughter and Tracy is just like, come on, Dad, stop that. Even at the very end, at the reception, he's like, remember to do everything he
Yeah.
says.
I was
And
like,
she's like, I will obey him,
like I
just
did.
as I have obeyed you.
Yep.
And he's like, oh shit. Like, they are just two people who are compatible. They're made for
Yeah,
each other.
that's what I'm saying. It would have worked. I think it would have worked.
And yeah, and Bond knows it.
Mm-hmm.
The second, maybe not the second he meets her for the first time, but as he gets to know her, which is something that Bond never does.
Mm-hmm.
Um, he's like, oh wow, we actually complement each other really nicely.
Mm-hmm.
We're good. We're a good pair. We're a good pair together.
Mm-hmm.
Almost begrudgingly, because he's like, I don't want to do this, but I have to, because that's love. You do stuff you don't want to because you have to.
So,
So romantic.
in a movie, a regular movie, would have ended it where okay, they're married, car drives off into the sunset, roll credits.
Which was the original plan. There's a shot near the end, when they drive off.
Mm-hmm.
There's like the old timey crane shot that goes above all the flowers as they drive off,
Yeah.
and they were like, we could have put the end right there,
Mm-hmm.
and it was in case the people didn't want the ending that we shot, we could make that the first scene of the next movie,
Yeah.
and just have this be the ending, have the happy ending where they drive off into their life.
Mm-hmm. So, but it was like, holy shit, they really was brave enough to end a Bond movie, a big budget movie at the time, like this, where it's like, so he's driving on the road with her, and then they stop because they were getting made fun of because the car had a bunch of flowers on it, and while he's taking the flowers off and she's talking to him, and it's a really cool, nice little conversation they're having. Diana Rigg, by the way, like I think she's probably I need to watch the other movies coming up, but I think she's probably one of the best actors to play a Bond girl.
Oh
like,
yeah.
Like they even had the scene where she's talking to Blofeld, and the way how her conversation with Blofeld too, like
That's so good.
It wasn't like, oh, let me go, or
Yeah,
I hate
it's
you.
the both of them. It's the both of them.
Yeah.
Telly Savalas really sells like something that you don't see from Blofeld that often, or Bond villains in general,
Mm-hmm.
of like they're trying to beat Bond at his own game.
Mm-hmm.
Like that never happens. They're usually like these not foreign, like ethnically foreign, but like foreign to humanity.
Yeah, yeah.
And they're like, we want to do evil stuff. And Blofeld traditionally is that. Like the Donald Pleasance version is that.
Mm-hmm.
But this version is like, I want to be more like Bond.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, I'm gonna try to bang your future wife, dude.
Yeah, and then she was like almost like playing in his game too, like, and then their whole conversation too was almost intellectual, and just like you could tell that she belongs on the, like she's got her training from doing like classical acting, stage acting, you know, because she really was bringing that gravitas to the role.
Oh yeah. And she distracts him with the poetry.
Mm-hmm.
When if he had seen the helicopters right away,
Yeah.
he would have blown them up before they even got there. And
Mm-hmm.
she saves everyone
Yep.
by distracting him, and then he eventually sees him.
Mm-hmm.
But then you get freaking Bond sliding on the ice,
Yeah.
with machine gun and blowing up. What? Jumping out of the helicopters? Oh my god, this movie! I
So
can't.
yeah, so then we go to the end now where so he's taking the flowers off, having a nice conversation with her. Then a car comes out of nowhere, and then a drive-by, gangster drive-by.
Yeah, and again, shot so well.
Mm-hmm.
Just like so fast, so visceral,
Mm-hmm.
so violent. Uh, and Bond's like, "All right, let's do a cool car chase. Time to go get Blofeld." And he looks over and
She's fucking dead.
she's gone.
And then
And a bloody death, like
Mhm.
she's been shot in the head through the windshield.
so Peter said he did like 3 takes, like one where he was like emotional, crying and everything, crying. Another one where he's not as emotional, but he's still like distraught. And then I guess he asked him to do it because he's like, Bond doesn't cry. Just play it as if Bond is cool with it. And he apparently used that take where Bond is not crying. He's just really like almost cool with her death, but it's more heartbreaking that way
Mm-hmm.
because he's almost like denying that she's dead, and it's just like, oh my god.
Yeah, even though she's right there,
Mhm.
and he's just he's in denial, but then he puts his head down. You can hear him cry.
Mhm.
So you don't see it. It's kind of like in The World Is Not Enough when Q says, "Never let them see you bleed."
So
It's like, you're gonna bleed, but if they don't see it, then it's like it didn't happen. Oh my God, my heart!
So that the world is not enough. It's part of his family crest. That whole thing
Yeah,
was.
yeah. So basically, these old timey families have their family crests,
Mhm.
and Blofeld's, I don't remember what it is, but Bond's is The World Is Not Enough.
Yeah.
They're the family coat of arms.
Mhm. Yeah, so that was a cool callback too.
Hmm.
With the
Yeah, I
movie.
mean, when we get to The World's Not Enough, we'll see that it's really like a spiritual sequel. If not, I mean, because they're all the same Bond, it's pretty much a direct sequel
Mhm.
to this movie.
Yeah, I'm probably gonna do like a rewatch of this, then watch World Is Not Enough when I
Did
get
you?
to it.
What's really funny is that there's several movies that directly invoke On Her Majesty's Secret Service,
Mm-hmm.
and all of them do that by having a kick-ass skiing scene.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
World's Not Enough, kick-ass skiing scene. For Your Eyes Only, kick-ass skiing scene.
Mm-hmm.
And Spectre, not a kick-ass movie, but kick-ass skiing scene. Skiing with a plane. It's pretty cool.
Right. But yeah, so it was a tragic ending. It was like, wow, this is so sad. I mean, Casino Royale had a tragic ending too, but just more like the fact that it ended. I think what Casino Royale did to not make it a sad ending is like he got his revenge almost.
Yeah, it has that last scene, that sequel hook scene of like, well, this has focused him.
Yeah, and
this has set him on the path to being Bond.
Bond, right? And
whereas this one ends with him just completely broken.
Mm-hmm.
Like he lost.
So
like he won the battle, but he lost the war because he lost the one person with whom he could actually see himself being happy with for more than an evening.
So if you had to judge the more tragic death, Vesper Lynn or Tracy, which one would you give it to?
Oh, Tracy. Because I didn't cry when Vesper died. last night, like yesterday, I knew
Mm-hmm.
I've seen this movie
Mm-hmm.
like 3 or 4 times, and yes, last night I was just like,
And I guess because
really good.
Vesper was almost like what, a triple agent, I guess, and
She was a lot more internally tragic
mm-hmm.
because she had her conflicting thing where she was going, on one side and then against the other and playing them against the middle.
Mm-hmm.
She, was a double agent against Bond but fell for him,
Mm-hmm.
etc., etc.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's a little too complicated to play for straight tragedy,
Yeah, yeah,
and it's really not until the end of Quantum of Solace that he gets the full context of what she was doing.
yeah, yeah.
But with Tracy, like she was completely innocent.
Mm-hmm.
She went through her own arc in that movie
Yeah.
where it wasn't as mysterious as Vesper's, where even after her death, you're still left guessing as to what her true motives were.
Mm-hmm.
And Bond reconciles that with that iconic line from the book, "The bitch is dead."
Mm-hmm.
Um, of like, what does it matter? She's gone.
Mm-hmm.
Who cares? Let me just pretend it never
So which
happened.
one would you think has more impact on Bond? Is it
Oh, Tracy. I
Tracy?
mean, Bond, Vesper set him on his path,
Mm-hmm.
and she's not in the classic series. She's not in the original Bond series, so he's kind of already on that path.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe she has the impact just because
And was
we
Vesper
would.
in the book, in the actual Casino Royale book?
Oh yeah, oh yeah,
And did she die in that
yeah,
book?
oh yeah.
Okay.
I mean, she does. It's not as action packed. She swallows pills in
Right.
that one. Um,
And
she
then
kills
and
herself.
Tracy was also in the
Yeah,
on and died in that as well.
yeah,
Okay. So he has two basically.
yeah. Casino Royale is it's got a lot of additions,
Mm-hmm.
but it is actually a pretty straight adaptation.
Right.
Like the whole first half of that movie is completely new,
Yeah.
but pretty much everything in the casino itself
Mm-hmm.
is pretty straight.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but Tracy, just that story that defines Bond, in the movies in a way that Vesper just doesn't. Like Vesper's story, partly because it's untold in the original series,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
really just lays the baseline of his characterization and why he's so uncaring.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but Tracy and his relationship with her, especially after, it makes him a lot more tragic
Mm-hmm.
because it's not so much as he had something taken away and then it became cynical.
Right.
It's like he saw what it was like.
Mm-hmm.
He was this close, and then when it's taken away, he goes, "Oh, I had my chance.
Mm-hmm.
Like this was it. This was my happily ever after, and I lost it." Uh, but he actually got to feel it. Where with Vesper, he didn't get to feel it
Mm-hmm.
because she was so, he was able to internalize by saying, "Oh, maybe it didn't matter to her.
Right.
Maybe she was just playing me all along. Maybe it was just me."
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But then with Tracy, there was no ambiguity.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Nothing for even if it wasn't ambiguous with Vesper, he was at least able to interpret it that way if he wanted to dull his emotions.
Right. Right.
But there was no out.
Yeah. You couldn't fool yourself with this one.
Exactly.
So it's funny, right? Like I said, I saw the later Bond movies before I saw the older ones, and one of the aspects to those movies was that he had a wife and she died
Hmm.
tragically. And I always thought that was like one of those backstories of Bond, like you never saw. There was never a movie about it. It was just like, hey, this is why he's all a womanizer because he had a wife and he doesn't want to fall in love again. And it was just like a mythology to him, right? Not knowing that there was an actual movie that showed that marriage. So when I did see on Our Majesty's Secret Service for the first time, which was around 2012 our time, was like, oh, this is the movie that it happens.
This
Like,
is that untold story.
I was
It
like,
actually it was told, but because it was, not Sean,
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
it became like myth to the casual viewer.
Right.
And really not until like that Blu-ray box set, I think that he's really gotten, the fact that he's, in the center, oh, a little on the right. He's a little off center, but he's on the cover of that box
Yeah,
set.
yeah.
Some people will go, "Hey, who the hell is that guy?" And then they'll watch his movie and be like, "Oh my god, what have we been sleeping on this whole time?" It's like the Yakuza games.
Right, right.
So like the Yakuza games came out, and everyone who played them was like, "Oh my god, these are the best games ever." But casual, the mainstream audience was just like, "Don't care. It's Japanese GTA," without even knowing what that means or the fact that it's not that. Then Yakuza 0 comes around, and then people play it, and they go, "Oh my god, where has this been?" And some people are like, "It's been here the whole time. It's been right here." And they're like, "Oh my god, no one ever told me about this. I didn't know about this game. I told you about this game. You knew about it the whole time." Wow, man. Well, I hope. What? Maybe they'll make. Are they going to make more? Are there other games in this series? Yeah, we just told you. And On Her Majesty's Secret Service is like that because it's been there the whole time, but usually for arbitrary reasons, like everything's a meme. Oh, isn't that movie supposed to suck? Well, none of them are supposed to suck.
Right.
They're not supposed to suck, except for maybe Diamonds Are Forever. But that movie and Diamonds Are Forever made a lot more money than On Her Majesty's Secret Service because back then, they just rejected George. General audiences just rejected him. But now that we're much more comfortable with the idea of all these people playing Bond, it's easier for general audiences to go back and experience a Bond movie that doesn't have Sean. And George, he paved the way for Roger Moore, and it took Roger Moore 2 or 3 movies to get his footing. And I think George Lazenby, he nails it out of the gate. Like there's some things that are a little flat in his delivery. Some of his lines I felt could have been better, but
it was his first role.
Exactly, it was his first role, and he was 30 years old. He was 2 years younger than Sean when he did Dr. No. Could you imagine if we had a whole decade of George Lazenby Bond movies that like actually got to overtly, openly build off of the characterization in On Her Majesty's?
Yeah, but didn't George screw himself though? I think he was the one who screwed himself out of
He took the bad advice of his agents is what they say now, and I think that's kind of true. They're like, this Bond thing, it's a fad. You got to do the hippie stuff.
Yeah. Because I think around that time, Easy Rider and all those sort of like art-driven movies were coming.
He wanted Bond to be a little more like that. And was just like, I don't want to be pigeonholed in this thing. And he wound up, faring very poorly because not only did he get pigeonholed as a thing, he also didn't get the money that usually comes with being pigeonholed into a role because he only played him once.
Yep.
He was offered a ridiculous contract, like an insanely lucrative contract to play him for 7 movies, and turned it down.
Jesus.
Which in some ways is a tragedy, and in some ways is the most punk rock thing I've ever seen. Be like, I don't need your millions. James Bond, I did that. What? Like that's so cool. But also, I would turn back time to undo Diamonds Are Forever. I would, especially if it was like a direct sequel to On Her Majesty's Service, directed by Peter Hunt, because Peter Hunt like dropped out. I think there was some bad blood after this movie's financial disappointment. Or if they wanted to bring him back, they weren't going to pay him as much, or they blamed him for the movie not doing so well, even though it's the best one. I mean, I don't know if it's the 100% absolute best one, but it could be. God damn it, it could be.
It's still highly regarded now if you go to like everybody's top 5 Bond movies.
And like the nerds who like worship Christopher Nolan, it's his favorite, so it should be theirs too. The Dark Knight is the greatest movie ever made.
What is this, Donald Trump?
I don't know what that voice was. It was not supposed to be Donald Trump. But
who do you think stepped into the role and nailed it other than Sean? What other actor you think like as soon as he stepped in the role just like comfortable like, oh shit, that's Bond?
Even though I have my issues with his portrayal of Bond in later movies, I think Daniel Craig in Casino Royale is one of the best Bond movies. you know, I thought that Pierce Brosnan did a good job in
Mhm.
Goldeneye,
Right.
but I think that he is so much more comfortable as Bond in Tomorrow Never Dies
Mm.
that when you go back to Goldeneye, you like there's little things that you go, ah, he was learning the ropes here. Okay, that when you go to Tomorrow Never Dies, even Goldeneye is probably a better movie overall,
Mhm.
but I think Pierce Brosnan as Bond in Tomorrow Never Dies is like a masterclass.
Mhm. Mhm.
And it combines so much of Bond from just over the generations
Right.
that it's oh man, so good. But like we'll get to Roger Moore in Live and Let Die, where I don't think that he is the problem with that movie. I think he's very good in that movie,
Mhm.
but I don't think that movie is good at all. I
Mhm.
think it's marginally better than Diamonds Are Forever.
Right.
Um, see Timothy Dalton in The Living Daylights. That's an interesting one because The Living Daylights is much more of a Bond movie, and it's one of the few Bond movies that's like a bona fide spy thriller.
Right.
So he really gets to be 007 the spy.
Mhm.
Um, and I think he's a little more comfortable in License to Kill, but that movie is such a departure for Bond.
It was like a
It's
darker.
yeah, it's one of my favorites,
Mhm.
but it's the one that's like a common complaint of it was, is this even a Bond movie? And like it is a Bond movie, but it's also got a great moment about of continuity, where Felix's wife on her wedding night throws her garter belt at Bond and he catches it, and she's like, "Oh, I guess you got to get married." And he's like, "No, no, no, no," and she's like, "Oh, come on," and he's just like, shut up, you fucking bitch." Uh, it doesn't say that,
Mhm.
but he gets agitated, and she gets a little taken aback,
Mhm.
and he leaves, and she's like, "Hey, what's eating his ass?" And Felix tells her, "Oh, he was married once, but that was a long time ago." And you go, "Oh, my heart!" And it's also the final nail in the coffin for anyone who thinks that Bond is just a code name. If you want to know more, I wrote a whole article on Screen Rant about it,
Yeah.
like 1,400 words about why Bond is not a code name. And hopefully we'll put that theory to bed forever.
Okay. Well, did I ever believe that?
I don't know if you believed it, but you liked it,
That
and I
that it was
like
a
it
code.
too.
That it
It,
was a
it's a
code
fun,
name.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's a fun theory. Like it's fun to think
I
that.
mean, not to say that all like, not to say that each actor played a different Bond, but could it be that? No, it doesn't work either. Don't
Well,
worry.
some people tried the whole, oh well, the first three up to Roger Moore, it's the same Bond because it's the
Right.
same Penny.
Right.
But you just have to accept that Bond is a Time Lord,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
and so is Moneypenny because she becomes a young nerd in Living Daylights. Because even though Lois Maxwell is Moneypenny, it
Mm-hmm.
would be a little weird if like she was macking with Timothy Dalton.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Although it'll also be super hot.
Yeah.
Like it's super hot on Her Majesty's because she is visibly older
Mm-hmm.
than Bond, but they still like have that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's all beautiful. It's all
Uh,
beautiful.
yeah. So that is on Our Majesty's Secret Service. Really good movie. Did
One of the greats.
did so does Diamond? Because I haven't seen that movie in a long time. Does Diamond pick up where this one left off?
It ambiguously does.
Because this movie was supposed to like Diamonds was because when this movie ends it says James Bond will return in Diamonds Are Forever,
Yeah.
which would
Well, so the original plan was that Tracy's death could have been,
the
not
beginning.
necessarily would have been, but it could have been edited into the beginning of
Mm-hmm.
Diamonds.
Yeah.
Even if it had been used at the end, they could have used it at the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and they could have, whatever the story would have been, it would have been a direct sequel to
Mm-hmm.
On Her Majesty's.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, when it was after shooting had ended, but before the movie was out,
Mm-hmm.
that it became obvious that George wasn't going to be in the next one,
Mm-hmm.
which also could have contributed to the movie not doing so well
Right.
comparatively.
Because
Like
the announcement came before the movie came out, right? That he was just gonna do this one, or did it come out after?
that is an interesting question.
Yeah.
I
Because
don't know.
It's
Because if the announcement that Sean was going to be back came out before
mhm,
OHMSS,
mhm,
then that would be kind of a kiss of death of like, oh, why watch this one if Sean's going to be back for the next one?
mhm.
I don't know if that happened, but if it did, that would be bad.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But it's also, it seems very possible.
And then the media was having a field day, like, oh, George was not getting along with his co-work co-stars. Like, I think because he said there was a time when they were on set, when the press was on set, and Diana, they were about to shoot like a love scene, and Diana says, I just ate garlic, George. I hope you ate some too," or something like that.
Right, which was like a joke,
Yeah, and then they
but
were like,
turned
"Oh my
into they
god,
hate each other.
they hate each
Mm,
other."
yeah.
uh,
Fake news. No.
yeah, and you could get
But
away. You could get away with fake news way more
it
back
was
then.
it was a different time,
Yeah,
and it was also harmless
yeah,
because it was just TV. It wasn't the goddamn motherfucking president. Oh my god, kill myself. Um, but not to get political, not to
yeah,
get political on the
yeah,
show,
yeah.
but uh, yeah, it was, that kind of tabloid entertainment journalism was really big back then.
Mm-hmm,
It still is now to a lesser extent, but it's become like its own sub industry with like reality TV. So it's
mm-hmm,
like the people who are being affected by it, like don't, they aren't
mm-hmm,
good at anything. They're not making any kind of art that could be affected by it.
mm-hmm,
Um, so it's like, who cares what Heidi Spencer or whatever their names are doing?
mm-hmm.
Or Spencer Bratt, whatever. Um, this is actual art here, and maybe the box office was affected by that.
Mm-hmm.
I do like to imagine like what it would have been like if Sean had played in that movie. Because the original plan was they were going to do On Her Majesty's instead of You Only Live Twice.
Yeah, yeah.
And what if young-ish Sean Connery had starred in that movie?
I almost wonder if he would like appreciate being Bond more because that would have allowed him more range.
Yeah,
Like he would
it's
have
the
stuck.
first one with an actual character arc.
Yeah, like he probably would have like, man, there's some depth to this. Let me stick around.
Hmm.
Uh-huh.
But then they bring him back for one that does the course correction of no character at all. Make him old and shitty. He's older in that than Roger Moore is in A View to a Kill. I swear. I mean, like not literally older, but like he looks older.
You know, I'm gonna have when I go through it again, I'll take note of this. But I almost felt like the first time I rewatched the older movies, that Roger Moore was really getting old though. Like he was just like,
He was getting pretty old.
yeah. I was like, oh man, shouldn't you retire from this?
Well, they did like they did some stuff. Like part of why he quit was his leading lady in A View to a Kill was like dangerously young.
Yeah.
Not dangerously, but when he was talking to someone and they're like, "Oh, my dad's your age," yeah, he was just like, "I'm out."
Yeah.
Or I would have been like, "That's hot." No, 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 that was just a joke. Maybe no, whatever. It's all beautiful,
All right.
or whatever. Everyone wants to judge everyone anyway, so nothing I can do is gonna stop that.
So all right, so the next movie will be Diamonds Are Forever. I know I love the theme song.
Diamonds are forever,
and I like the
forever.
Kanye remake. Don't judge me.
I'll take your word for it.
But I want to see if that movie is as sucky as what you say, because I don't remember anything about it, so I have to.
And it's fun because I love Bond so much
Mm-hmm.
that whenever I see that gun barrel logo, I just like whatever preconceptions I have, I just kind of throw them away, and I'm like, all right, let's go, let's do this. Even if it's one that I don't like that one or Live and Let Die or View to a Kill, like because I know that there's even in the worst ones, there's some stuff in them that I do like, except for maybe Diamonds, but. I was because I was thinking about the thing that I like in Live and Let Die, and I was thinking about the things that I like in A View to a Kill, and then I was like, wait, what do I like in Diamonds? I got nothing.
The song, maybe.
Yeah, just a song. Like the that is a good video segment. But I mean, we'll see. We'll see. We're gonna find out next week.
All right.
We're gonna go over it.
All right. So you can find me on Twitter at Marky. No, wait, yeah, on Marky Tundra. You can find me on Facebook and Instagram at Pop Culture Galaxy, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button and that notification bell. Where can they reach you, Zach?
You can reach me at my name Zach Wojner, and you can find my work at screenrant.com
Mm-hmm.
and my E3 coverage at extra life or extra dash life dot org.
Right. Right. All right. So that brings us to the end. So until next time, folks, I want to say peace.
Indeed.